Now, look, the Labor Party are at it again. They don't know where they stand on energy policy because they don't know where they stand on climate change, carbon dioxide, or most importantly, coal-fired power. Anthony Albanese is trying to say he'll go to the next election without specific climate change targets. Albo has seen the writing on the wall, but the unions have got the gun at his head. The leaked draft platform of the Labor Party makes no mention of a 2030 or 2035 emissions reduction or renewable energy target, both of which I might add, in my opinion, are rubbish. Just motherhood statements. But nonetheless, that is the commitment, net zero emissions by 2050. Well, Ed Scott Morrison, he's talking about cheap and reliable energy, and without it, he says, there can be no manufacturing revival. He says without a future high-tech manufacturing base, there can be no jobs growth. Now, all of that's correct. And that our energy prices need to reflect the lower international prices. I might add, they should reflect our abundant availability of raw materials. But then he too, the Prime Minister, is spooked by the left, by the climate change renewable energy zealots and the anti-coal-fired power minority. On the one hand, Scott Morrison keeps on saying coal's a part of the plan, but then talks about a Hunter Valley gas power plant in New South Wales. The Prime Minister said that coal would remain a critical energy source for decades to come, and then we must replace the 1,000 megawatts we'll have lost when the Liddell coal-fired plant closes in 2023. Well, that's all well and good, but I have to say this seems to me a bit of pie in the sky. We do need a major base load power station. In fact, we need 10 of them. And we could use all our resources, coal, gas and nuclear. But it appears that coal won't get a Guernsey because we're terrified of the greenies. Nuclear, well, we've got laws preventing nuclear. And gas, when AGL closes Liddell in the early 2020s, well, Matt Canavan can't find his way onto the front bench of the Morrison government, but I suspect he's forgotten more than most of those people know. He joins us tonight. Matt, thank you for your time. Will a gas-based manufacturing plant work in the Hunter Valley? Where's the gas coming from?
Well, I don't think it will, Alan, and I don't think it will because of the real-world evidence we see before us. This plan, the plan to rely on gas to sort of band-aid, gaffer-tap our energy system together, was what the South Australian Labor Party put together a few years ago after the Black event there in 2017. They said, well, let's build a gas-fired power plant, which they've done. That has kept the lights on, but of course, as you would probably know, power prices in South Australia are the highest in the world right now. And I don't think that's what we want, because I agree with you completely, and I agree with the Prime Minister, that we must get our energy prices down, and we're not going. We've got no hope of bringing manufacturing back to this country unless we do. But we've got to use the natural resources that we are blessed with.
Yeah, but there we were in the Hunter Valley, Matt.
More than 90% of its gas. Yeah, exactly. New South Wales has no gas, basically no gas. It's in the middle of the world's best thermal coal basin there in the Hunter Valley. We export 160 million tonnes of the stuff from Newcastle. It's the biggest coal port in the world. That's enough to power 50 coal-fired power stations. Yet we won't keep any of it for ourselves. It is madness. And it's that kind of madness that will prevent us bringing manufacturing jobs back to Australia.
Now, look, you're in the government. Does anyone talk to you? Does the Prime Minister say, now, Matt, you know a bit about this. What do you reckon?
I've been making these points for months, Alan, because I've seen the rhetoric around having a gas-based manufacturing plan. And, you know, I just look... Well, it's not me saying this, Alan. I mean, the ACCC has been reporting on our gas markets every year for the past few years.
Massive
shortage.
And
in their report earlier this year, they said, yes, that we face an uncertain supply future for gas in eastern Australia. And they're absolutely right. In the next few years, we're looking at having quite a big shortfall. Just to put that shortfall in context, this gas-fired power station, if it was to run all the time, would need about 50 petajoules a year. That's just an energy unit. Yeah. The shortfall we're facing in East Australia in the next few years is about 100 petajoules a year. So double the requirement for this plant. And that's on existing use.
That's right. And then, of course, you can't just, Matt, you can't just say we're going to build a gas-fired power station. You've got to take the legislation. If the Commonwealth is going to do it, it's got to get through the Senate. Then you've got all this green tape and development approvals by the states. I mean, this is never stuff when, as you say, we've got coal, abundant resources of coal, get into it, use the coal instead of exporting it to other people so they can have cheap electricity.
Well, that's right, Alan. And there is sort of this counter-argument saying, well, we won't get a coal-fired power station up. We'd love to do coal, but it's not going to get support. But hang on a second. You know very well, Alan, it's hardly like fracking has enormous support out in the public domain. I mean, you and I probably have a slightly different view on the issue. But if you're talking about something that's politically difficult, I think asking to frack people's land is a little bit more difficult than building a coal-fired power station in this country. Politically, it's a little bit more difficult. And that's been proven so. So if we want to do something that we think can happen, well, I actually think the support's there for coal-fired power station. But we're sort of around the edges here, Alan. Let's call a spade a spade. What's really happening here is the same people who brought you the koala catastrophe in New South Wales are bringing you the coal-fired power catastrophe now. It's the Matt Keans and the New South Wales Liberal Party of the world who don't want to build this stuff and holding our manufacturing industry to ransom by not supporting our advantages in natural, cheap power.
Yeah. Well, what about nuclear? I mean, isn't the argument of a leader that they go to the electorate and prosecute the case, like Howard did with the GST, something which might appear unfashionable, but when you explain it clearly to the electorate, they say, hey, he's making sense, that bloke. I think this is the way to have cheap electricity.
Well, I think you're absolutely right with nuclear. We should look to do that. There's been some developments in the last few weeks where modular reactors have been submitted for approval in the US for the first time. Now, these are smaller nuclear reactors that would be much more suited to our smaller country, whereas existing off-the-shelf nuclear reactors are very, very large and might struggle to fit into our network. So we should be pursuing those options, in my view. I mean, why don't we seek to lead the world in this type of stuff? You know, that's what really frustrates me. We have the best raw materials. We've got the best uranium. We've got the best coal.
Yes.
Why aren't we actually developing the frontier best coal-fired power stations in the world, the best nuclear sort of options?
Well,
but we seem to be sitting back.
All I can say is, well, thank God for you and keep at it. I'll keep at it. You keep at it. We might be able to convince one or two people. You're always welcome here to talk sense, Matt Canavan. It's great to talk to you up there at Yeppoon. I hope it's all well. Thank you for your time, Matt. There he is, Senator Matt Canavan.